The matter of the caravan has been a hot topic for the last couple of weeks, especially now that they are headed our way. And if you haven't listened, Lionel has a very interesting expose. I'll see if I can find it and attach it, on the use of words. Since he is a word master, I defer to him absolutely when it comes to playing with words and playing with them in a meaningful way. So he used caravan as the word of the day to play with, recognizing that it is an innocent, positive, engaging, playful term. Oh, gee, they're just on a caravan. They're all coming up here. Wagons, ho, here they come. And here we are with tens of thousands of people headed our way, called a caravan. Well, they're not a caravan. They're a bunch of illegals moving across country. And they are a mob. And they are, as many have pointed out, here they are claiming to seek asylum here because they are being picked on in their native countries, and yet they're carrying the native country's flag. How does that work? If you like your native country's flag, ergo, and you like the native country, then I have a hint for you. Stay there. Stay there. So some people sent me various suggestions. One of them, I asked her whether she felt she needed to have recognition for it, and she said she didn't, so I won't particularize her as such, but my hat's off to the organizational aspect of it from the outset. And then I have embellished a little myself through thoughts that I've had for many, many years. So here are some suggestions about how to deal with the mob, the indigenous South American mob that is headed our way, and what President Trump should do. I'm going to reverse the order a little bit, because one of the things that we have to do is look to the immediacy of the problem. And that is to say, what do we do with these guys that are coming here en masse, attempting to enter through Texas, Arizona, or California? And the thing that I would do as part of an executive order and demand, if I were Trump, and everybody knows I'm not, okay, and I don't have any pretentious allusions to the contrary, that we would demand that Mexico immediately gather the entire mob up and return them to the southern Mexico border, and to prevent any crossings whatever into this country or be held liable therefore, together with following up on it and seeing that they're all removed and taken south and not brought forward another mile from where they are. And failing that, we should threaten Mexico with the termination of any aid or benefits that we're providing to them, suspension of any trade, at least as to certain objects, tariffs on objects brought here from companies that are owned and operated in Mexico, tariffs established to hold, to offset the costs to us for Mexico's failure to do so, at least equal to the invasion amount. That we should have in addition to that, and failing their absolute compliance with the demand of the president, that this entire mob, which is in Mexico illegally and has no business being in Mexico, they are invaders in Mexico, and Mexico is turning a blind eye to it. So failing that, the president should say to the Mexican president, you either turn them around or we will turn them around on your territory. And you will either do everything we ask you to do, everything we demand that you do, or there'll be consequences. But not only that, if you fail to stop this en masse infiltration onto our border, we reserve the right and absolutely demand that we inhabit 10 or 20 miles south onto your border, past your border, to protect our own border from invasion. And you will grant us unequivocal right to use that property to prevent anybody from crossing our territory. I don't know whether you have seen, I saw a video today supposedly of a train that is hauling military equipment south to the border, and it included, it looked to me like 100 heavy tanks, a bunch of Humvees, some half-tracks, and the rest of that. So it is not, it is being treated as an invasionary event, and it should be. So any that are handed over by us that we would capture within that 10 miles will be either handed to Mexico, or we reserve the right to freely transport them to the southern Mexican border to be removed from Mexico and not allowed back in. And failing that, again, the Mexicans should take them and take custody of them and not allow them to come north at all, ever. Anybody that's found in that group to have been trafficking people, paying for people, subsidizing people, providing for the transport, providing for the facilities for it, should be charged criminally and held in Mexico for violating Mexico's law and or ours. And we should reserve the right to extradite any of them into the United States that are trafficking for getting payment for hauling illegals, that are doing drugs, guns, sex, etc. And anybody that has a youth that is not its own child, his or her own child, should be held for a criminal violation of that child, and for kidnapping, or for illegally holding a child. And above that, anybody that helped to facilitate it, either in Mexico, south of Mexico, or anywhere else in the world that provided money or goods or traffic or facilities or cash or organizational benefits, should be treated as a treasonous individual, and they should be charged as such. And we should reserve the right, certainly in Mexico, but also anywhere in the world, to charge that person with treasonous conduct and with a serious violation of American sovereignty, and reserve the right to extradite them to this country to be charged and tried and convicted as such. And yes, George Soros, I mean you and many others like you, anybody, including the Democrats in this country, or globalists or New World Order folks or neocons that are helping to facilitate this, should be charged with treason and or equivalent violations, and extradited, if they're not in this country, extradited in this country and tried and convicted for it. So let me back up to some of the more remedial kinds of things that I think we need, and they include: all immigration laws must be strictly enforced. That is, we should strictly enforce them everywhere. Secondly, any illegal alien caught here must agree to immediately return to their native land, or be charged, tried, and held as a criminal, to be returned to their native land when their sentence is done. None of them who refuse to leave immediately should ever be allowed to become a citizen. Any detention, any refusal to do so should prevent them from ever becoming a citizen. Those who immediately return to the native country would be eligible in a year to begin to apply to legally come back to this country. Those caught committing crimes here in this country and then handed over must be handed over and deported or serve double terms. And I think they ought to serve double terms. They ought to serve whatever state violations they have in the equivalent of federal terms. And anybody that facilitates the release of someone charged with a felony or significant misdemeanor in any of the states should be charged with aiding and abetting a criminal. And that includes you, California, for letting people go on bond that you know, or you reasonably have the duty to know, are illegal aliens that were being charged with crimes and violations in your country and your state for which you failed to hand them over to the feds. And you, anybody, sheriff's department, police department, anybody that issues an order as such, and this is you, little Moonbeam Brown, if you pass an executive order authorizing the release in any of these stupid sanctuary cities for people who have committed criminal conduct and are not turned over to ICE, you should be charged for it. And we should make sure there's a crime for it. We should provide for anybody that aids and abets the criminal behavior or the criminal hiding or sanctuary of somebody in a city or county or town that aids and abets people that they know to be illegal should be charged with a crime, and they should be charged with a federal crime and held as such. And it should be significant enough so that they get in trouble. I'd like to see the mayor of San Francisco and Moonbeam Brown and the Rahm Emanuel in Chicago and some of these other guys handcuffed and walked out of their office for criminal violation, federal criminal violations. That's what we need to see. All right, let's go to page 2. And this applies to you Republicans mostly, big business guys, the guys that are secretly hiding folks away, that are using them in meatpacking plants and agriculture departments and collection devices and basically forced labor, hotel and motel management, and a bunch of others that are taking jobs away from legitimate Americans. Yeah, you save $3, $4, $5 an hour. You don't have to pay any benefits. You're not protecting these people. You can toss them. You can work them extra. You can mess with them overtime and not properly pay for and take care of them. And you should be charged as well. And my suggestion, recommendation is anybody caught with having hired 3 or more illegals, I admit, sometimes you have a house worker or a temporary worker or a yard worker or something like that, innocent minor infractions aside, anybody that hires 3 different people full-time that has not properly checked and identified those people should be charged $100 a day for every day that person worked, a fine, costs and attorney's fees on top of it. The second time that they are charged for a similar event, and perhaps only one person the second time, they should be charged $300 a day and charged $10,000 or $100,000 for violations because they already knew about it. And the third time that they're caught doing so, they should be charged with a felony. They should be charged $10,000 per employee plus the $300 a day. They should be charged some huge fine, and they should be required to spend time in jail. And we're not talking about the field construction officer or manager. We're talking about the CEO. We're talking about the directors. We're talking about the regional guys. We're talking about the folks that are overseeing the construction stuff. And yes, you, Edelman, and some of these others that have folks in Las Vegas that are hiring illegals, you ought to be held criminally chargeable. And if you're the CEO or the chief financial officer or the manager of a hotel, you should spend time in jail for hiring illegals. Let's get rid of this. It's time to do it all. We should have anybody that we're holding that is an illegal that's crossed the border. We have these problems right now with them being released, turned loose. Well, we have a way of fixing that. Didn't we put supposedly, theoretically, put ankle bracelets on McCain and little Hill Bob and the rest of these guys? What's wrong with an ankle bracelet? What I would say to anybody that's caught here illegally is you have 2 choices. You can stay in jail, or 3. You can stay in jail, you can pay for your way to return to your native country, or number 3, you can wear an ankle bracelet so that we can find you, and when you have a hearing, we're going to come get you. And if you fail to show up, we're going to charge you more. That's the way it works. So we put identifying hardware on these people, stuff that can't come off. And then we put a halt to all entitlements for illegal immigrants. I mean, one of the things to which I alluded today had to do with, I was talking to somebody in California, and they were working in Sacramento, and they were working on getting people set up for scholarships and for training and for technical aid and for work in learning how to weld and all kinds of trades. And I said, well, how do you screen these folks for citizenship? And she goes, oh, no, we don't do that. The undocumented are as entitled to learn as our own citizens. We don't screen them at all. This was 10 years ago. And so I'm saying, well, you get federal benefits for doing that, California, and you're using it to support and supply and engage and enhance illegal immigrants who are being held here or who are here illegally and are getting training at the rest of our expense. We have citizens all over this country that are unemployed or underemployed or undertrained. Why is it we're training illegals in California at our expense when these people could get benefit? All of the rest of these people in the country could get benefit, and they should get benefit first. And if we have money left over pouring out our ears, yeah, go ahead, sure, fine. But let's do it in their country. They want to learn how to be a welder in Honduras? Great. Let's send them some aid. They can learn how to weld in Honduras. So, and that includes the termination of benefits, includes all the hospital stuff, the aid to dependent children, the WIC programs, the food programs, the subsidized housing, the transportational stuff, the lower income things across the board. Nobody that's here illegally should get any of those benefits. We have people that are going hungry in this country and that are underemployed and are retired and are disabled that are not getting adequate benefits, that don't have proper health care, and we're providing benefits to people who don't belong here? I beg your pardon. How is it anybody can vote for someone who would say, well, we need to help the illegals out? Not only that, not only do we need to help them, not only do we need to treat them as well as we treat our own citizens, but we need to facilitate them coming into this country, and we need to hide them in our states and counties so that nobody will come and get them just because they don't belong here. Because as far as we're concerned, they could all come in. That's craziness. How could anybody vote for them? Anybody. I don't get it. So we should stop. I agree with the president. I think it may or may not take a constitutional amendment. If an executive order will terminate this anchor baby business, this birthright, we should do it. But even if it won't, we should be immediately deporting any pregnant person. We should not give visas to anybody that's pregnant that would encompass the period of time during which they would have a child. We should require in their visas that if they become pregnant while they're here, they immediately arrange to leave, and that they leave no less than 3 months before their term date. We shouldn't have birth babies in this country, and we shouldn't be paying for them. There are places like Brownsville, Texas, that I understand something like 90% of the babies born in the hospital there are illegals. That's crazy. Or of illegals, they become citizens. Yeah, right. Isn't that a good one? And so we basically have agreed to provide benefits for those people because they sneaked across the border to their children for 85 or 100 years. It's absolutely insane. So we should tax all remittances that are sent out of this country. People that are sending their wages to other parts of the country, unless they can show, unless when they turn stuff over to a wire or a transfer service or whatever else, unless they can show that they've paid Social Security and had withholding held and they are a legal viable employee in this country, there should be a 30 or 50% reduction in the transfer that's held back for tax purposes. We should halt all foreign aid to any country that permits invaders, and we should do so immediately. And we should enforce a national voter ID, and we should absolutely positively ensure that it's kept. It should be matched up to birth records and death records. There should be no state which operates its own internal workings that should not be able to absolutely positively validate that every single person that votes in that state is legally entitled as an American citizen to do so. American citizen, and preferably a citizen of that state to do so. There's just no excuse for this. We need to shore these things up. Maybe you don't like my ideas, maybe you don't like my suggestions, I don't care. Find other ones that are equivalent to it that actually serve the purpose. But we've been pitter-puttering on this since Reagan granted amnesty 30-odd years ago. There's no excuse for us not fixing this. The Democrats want illegals here because they want them to vote and get benefits and provide the ongoing input of keeping a captive audience to vote. And the Republicans, the wealthy, fat cat, neocon, pro-business Republicans, want to look the other way while the illegals work for their funding sources and their partners and buddies who are giving them all the benefit for being in office and where they're going to get hired when they decide to get out of office or get run out of office. We've had enough, and there should be honest people running for Congress right now that can fix this on both sides and make sure that it gets done. But the immediacy of the problem is President Trump put the gleep on Mexico, put the thumb on them, put a big thumb on them. They either load those folks up and send them south, or they give us 10 or 20 miles of territory across the border to make damned awful sure nobody crosses the border. And then we put 15,000 troops or 100,000 troops, I don't care, and drones and satellites, and anything that moves gets stopped in that 10-mile territory. We have curfews and the whole works. If Mexico is not going to help us, then by God, we ought to take charge. And if they refuse to let us there, then we stop everything. We stop the trade, we tariff them, we suspend any benefits we give them, and then we cross the border anyway, and we defy them. And if if they mess with us, then we straighten them out. There's just no excuse for it. So thanks so much for watching. I mean, this sounds kind of like a hard-headed approach to it, but we've soft-pedaled it. We've had soft-boiled eggs that we've played with for 35 years, and it's time to do this right. The president may or may not have made a wise decision bringing this up the week of the election. Perhaps he didn't. And I hope it does not curtail the momentum. Perhaps for those of us who have had enough, this is a good first sign, and this is something that further impels us to go forward. I voted today. It was the easiest election I've ever had. It was just plunk, plunk, plunk. If you had an R, you got to vote. If you had an R, it didn't matter if it was constable or energy czar or commission for this or county commissioner or police chief or constable. It didn't matter. They all got my vote. If they had an R, they got my vote. And I hope the rest of you do similarly. Thanks so much for watching. Hey, this is an exciting time. Let's see how we go.